night Dr. Elena Carter learned that medicine was not just science but sacrifice, the city of Chicago was drowning in rain. The storm had started just after sunset, rolling over Lake Michigan like a warning no one had prepared for. By the time Elena stepped through the sliding glass doors of Westbridge Medical Center, the emergency room was already overflowing. Ambulance sirens screamed in the distance. The waiting area buzzed with restless anxiety. Nurses moved quickly, voices controlled but urgent. The scent of antiseptic and wet coats filled the air. Elena paused for half a second at the nurse's station, slipping on her white coat. Her dark curls were pulled back into a low bun, a few strands escaping around her temples. Her expression was calm, but her eyes carried the quiet exhaustion of someone who had given too much of herself for too long. She was 34 years old. Board certified in emergency medicine. Respected. Precise. Unshakable under pressure. But tonight would test the edges of all of that. 4-car collision coming in, Nurse Patel called out. 2 critical. 1 pediatric. Elena didn't hesitate. Trauma Bay 1 and 2. Page respiratory. Alert surgery. Her voice was steady. Controlled. The kind of voice that made chaos slow down. The ambulance doors burst open minutes later. Rain-soaked paramedics rushed in a young woman barely conscious, her pulse weak. Blood soaked through the gauze wrapped around her abdomen. 28-year-old female, the paramedic shouted. Internal bleeding suspected. BP dropping. On my count, Elena said. They transferred the patient. Elena's hands moved quickly, efficiently, assessing, pressing, calculating. Type and cross. 2 units O negative. Fast exam now. The ultrasound probe glided over the patient's abdomen. Free fluid. Internal bleeding confirmed. We're losing her, Nurse Patel whispered. No, Elena said quietly. We're not. There was something in her tone, not arrogance. Not denial. Determination. Prep for or. Call Dr. Reynolds. As the team rushed the patient upstairs, another stretcher rolled in. This one smaller. A little boy. Maybe 7 years old. Curly hair matted with rain. Eyes wide with fear. Elena, one of the residents, called. This is Liam. He was in the back seat. Complaining of chest pain. Elena knelt slightly so she was eye level with him. Hey, Liam, she said gently. I'm Dr. Carter. You're safe now, okay? He nodded, but tears slid silently down his face. She examined him carefully. Bruising across the sternum. Rapid breathing. Seatbelt injury. Let's get a chest x-ray. And oxygen. As the team worked, Elena's mind split in two, one half present, one half calculating possibilities. Pulmonary contusion. Pneumothorax. Internal trauma. She had seen nights like this before. But something about the storm outside made it feel different. Like the city itself was holding its breath. An hour later, the young woman from the first trauma case was in surgery. And Liam's oxygen levels began to drop. Elena, the respiratory therapist, called. His saturation's falling. 85. Elena stepped closer, studying the monitor. Prep for intubation. The room stilled. Liam's small fingers reached for her wrist. Am I going to die? He whispered. For a split second, time slowed. Elena had been trained to respond clinically. Calmly. But she also knew the weight of a child asking that question. No, she said firmly, meeting his eyes. Not on my watch. They intubated. The tube slid into place. Ventilator engaged. His oxygen climbed slowly. 90. 93. 96. A collective breath released in the room. But the night was far from over. At 1:17 a.m., the hospital lost partial power. The storm had knocked out a transformer downtown. Backup generators kicked in, but half the surgical wing flickered. Elena's heart tightened. Dr. Reynolds was still operating on the woman upstairs. She grabbed the stairwell 2 steps at a time. In the operating room, tension hung thick in the air. The surgical field glowed under emergency lighting. "We're controlling the bleed," Reynolds muttered, sweat on his brow. "But it's close." Elena stepped beside him. "How bad?" "Splenic rupture. Massive blood loss." The monitors beeped, steady but fragile. Outside, thunder cracked like an explosion. And then, for 3 seconds, the lights dimmed again. 3 seconds that felt like forever. When they stabilized, Elena realized something else. The young woman's phone was still in her coat pocket downstairs. And it hadn't stopped vibrating. Family. Waiting. Unaware. Back in the ER, Liam's parents had arrived. His mother clutched Elena's hands with trembling fingers. "Please," she whispered. "Please tell me he's okay." Elena looked at her carefully. "He's critical. But he's fighting. And so are we." The hours blurred together. A heart attack in room 5. An elderly man in cardiac arrest in room 7. A nurse breaking down quietly in the supply closet. By 4:45 a.m., the storm had slowed. The surgical doors finally opened. Dr. Reynolds removed his gloves slowly. She made it. Relief washed through Elena like warmth after cold. But medicine has a way of never letting relief last too long. At 5:12 a.m., Liam's monitor alarmed. His blood pressure crashed. "Elena." She rushed back. Internal bleeding they hadn't seen. A hidden tear. They moved fast. Faster than thought. Fluids. Blood. Compression. "Stay with me," Elena whispered under her breath. Minutes stretched painfully. And then, a pulse strengthened beneath her fingers. Stable. Fragile. But alive. When the sun finally rose over Chicago, its light filtered softly through the hospital windows. The city looked peaceful again. As if nothing had happened. Elena stood outside Liam's room watching him sleep, machines humming quietly around him. His mother sat beside the bed, holding his hand. The young woman from the crash was in recovery. Alive. Against the odds. Elena removed her gloves slowly. Her body ached. Her mind buzzed. Her heart felt heavy but steady. This was what medicine truly was. Not the prestige. Not the title. Not the applause. It was standing in the middle of chaos and refusing to let go. It was telling a child he would live and fighting until that became true. It was carrying strangers' lives in your hands and understanding that sometimes, even when you did everything right, you could still lose. But not tonight. Tonight, they had won. As Elena stepped outside into the cool morning air, the city glistened under washed skies. She closed her eyes briefly. Some nights break you. Some nights remind you why you chose this life. And some nights do both. She walked toward her car, exhausted but unshaken. Because in a world that could change in seconds, she would always show up. And tomorrow night, when the sirens screamed again, she would walk back through those hospital doors.